What's up, summoners, and welcome back to another ProGuides Wild Rift video. And for today we're going to take a look at how you counter specific champions or general themes in solo queue. So let's just get going. First, we have Fiora and Graves, with Graves countering Fiora in lane. For this matchup, you have to be very careful on level 1, she can really hurt you with her lunge ability. After that, it's going to be a lot easier. But let's get to talk about what the champion does. He basically replies to a Fiora with everything he does. Usually Fiora dashes towards you to deal poke damage to then walk away. However, Graves has the perfect answer against that kind of trading pattern. An auto attack and a dash towards her, which is basically an auto attack cancel. After that, he can even use his first ability to clear the wave or punish her even more. Keeping up this type of trading, Fiora slowly depletes her health pool and just cannot lane anymore. Nonetheless, you can take it more relaxed in the first stage of the game, as being even after your first recall is your automatic victory. She just cannot win anymore without any outside help. Getting a BF sword and a Vampiric Scepter or just a Vampiric Scepter is already enough to topple the matchup. Like literally, she can't do anything, you'll sustain all her damage and you'll out-trade her with anything you do. The only thing you can theoretically mess up is shooting everything you have into a riposte ability, which should not happen, and even if it happens, there's no way you can get hit by it because you still have your dash available. So as long as you play towards the rules of the matchup, there's no way for you to lose unless the enemy jungle stomps you. And with that established, you'll basically remove all the agency Fiora has inside of a game. Because if she cannot acquire anything by split pushing, what else does she provide to the team? When she's weak and unable to deal damage because you're stomping her. And if we transition towards more teamfight oriented scenarios, even then you'll vastly outshine her. You have AoE damage and your crits hurt like a truck. For runes, you want to take Conqueror, for stamina spells Flash and Barrier and sometimes Ignite, depends on the matchup of course. And for the build, you want a Bloodthirster into an Infinity Edge, which are your core items. But if you don't have the goal to complete any of those, just go a BF Sword into a Vampiric Scepter. Keep in mind, AD works a bit different for Graves. The more base AD he has, the more insane he scales with the shotgun. And honestly, just having a Vampiric Scepter in the inventory never feels bad. And after this, let's move on to our question of the day. What is the hardest champion or theme you've personally encountered the most issues with? Let me know in the comments below. Next up comes a champion that deals very well with mages or any AD carry on the middle lane. It's Fizz. Yes, I know, another assassin, but it's solo queue, so assassins are just broken in terms of dealing with the current champions that are played. So for laning, you have to be very careful in the early game. You don't want to get poked out too much. So for the levels 1 to 2 to 3, you want to play a little bit more reserved. What you can do though is, especially into a melee matchup if that ever happens, you can utilize your second ability's auto attack cancel. That grants you more damage, and if you're smart by using it correctly, especially while last hitting, you get a cooldown refund if you kill a minion. So when the enemy champion is close to you and you last hit a minion with your active second ability, you just get a cooldown refunded and he takes the AoE splash damage from the ability anyways, and afterwards you can cast it on him once again for extra damage. But what is the actual trademark of the champion? It's being absolutely slippery and annoying to deal with. You can picture this champion as a minion in Fool's hands. But if you give this champion to a player who can pilot the champion, you get an absolute monster. For that, you have to keep a few things in mind. Using his third ability to dodge incoming spells is mandatory. So when the enemy Orianna, for example, throws a combo into your face, you want to use your E to jump over them. After using those cooldowns, since she's a cooldown dependent champion, she doesn't have anything left to defend herself. And that is a tool you can use to stomp her. Nonetheless, you have to be very careful about your own cooldowns yourself. Once you commit your third and first ability, you're out of options to run away. So rather be on the lookout and keep your first ability as long as you can to maybe even dash away to a minion. As you hit level 5 though, all these things are issues of the past, because now your presence is a threat. Once you have access to your ultimate ability, they have to constantly respect your positioning in lane and the relative distance to you. If they get too close, you can just fish with your ultimate, and if they get hit, they'll undoubtedly die, which then leads us to the late game of the champion. As the game goes on, you want to use your ultimate ability to catch the enemy off guard. You don't have to jump in yourself instantly, you can just wait for your ultimate to do the job. In most situations you might even get a few valuable cooldowns without hard committing. And with the right build, which we are going to give you at least for the core items, you will have your ultimate more than often enough. So for runes, go Electrocute, for summoner spells Flash and Ignite, and for the build you want Luden's Echo. After Luden's Echo, you just build the Rabadon's Death Gap, and then you can make the call to build something like a Lichbane or a Void Stuff or a Prophet's Pendant. For boots on the other hand, you want the Lucidity boots with the Stasis enchant. You will get the boots most likely after your first item completion, and the enchantment at the moment you actually need it. But now let's talk about something that's a little bit more unusual. Dealing with aggressive laners by abusing passive jungle experience. By that, I mean don't spend too much time clearing. Some champions are functional earlier than other champions. For example, a Lee Sin can pull things off level 2 and doesn't need level 3 to do so. So rather spend your time in the immediate proximity of a lane that you know is going to snowball in one or the other direction. This way you can intervene and capitalize on the enemy's mistakes. So some might say this is a little bit coin flippy, but if you take into consideration that the nature of solo queue is very chaotic, you will have a lot of games that involve little to no vision. And since jungle gold income from camps is rather low, sharing gold with your laners after ganking pays more and grants more experience if you get a kill. It sounds very stupid, but if you get a kill or the enemy jungler gets a kill in the very early game, for example from a level 2 gank, he'll be insanely ahead in terms of not only gold, but also EXP. And as a consequence, contesting or fighting for the Scuttle Crab becomes a very big problem. But don't worry, there's already an option for you to use to become that person yourself. Be active with your camera and spot opportunities. By that I mean just look at the wave state, where is it going, what champions are facing each other, and what do they typically do. For example, have you ever seen a very passive Darius? I didn't, at least not in solo queue. The next pick on the list is Zed into squishy champions. Similar to Fizz, he fulfills the same purpose, but as an AD version. Also very similar to other assassins, he has to be very mindful in the early game. He's super vulnerable without having access to all of his abilities, which consequently means that he has to stay away from minions if he's getting zoned, and his only ways of last hitting is using his first ability. But if you're playing against a Zed, for example, you never want to align yourself with a minion that is about to die. This way you'll grant him an easy hit with the shuriken and the last hit at the same time. But what exactly does this champion do? This champion has a very specific pattern in which he's going to kill people. In laning phase, as he's relatively weak, he has to abuse his cooldown on Electrocute and the Shadow to hit a combo. Usually after hitting one combo, the next combo on the second Electrocute cooldown is going to be lethal, given that you're running Ignite. So for the laning phase, ideally you want to poke from level 1 onwards, and depending on how much damage you have dealt, you might even all in on level 2 already. If that doesn't happen though, that's no problem at all. On level 3 you'll turn into a real menace, which the enemy champion has to respect whatsoever. And especially as the game goes on, and you hit your level 5 power spike for your ultimate ability, nobody can just walk after you into the fog of war. You might sit in any brush and wait for them to kill them. But there's one thing that annoys you the most, and it's called the Stasis enchant. So make sure as the game goes on, please check the inventory of the enemy team for this enchant. You never want to commit your ultimate in trade for that thing. There are just better opportunities. And to make sure you get the best leads early on, you're running Electrocute with Flash and Ignite, and your first item should be Yumu's Ghostblade. This item grants you so much more mobility on the map and therefore more options to snowball. And you don't have to worry at all about late game. You just have to be very patient, similar to the Katarina. You don't have to all in, poking is also very valuable. Compared to PC League, even your shadows, if you have multiple shadows out with the ultimate combination, deal bonus damage on the third ability, which is quite a lot of bonus damage. But even if you only use your first ability and your third ability on the shadows range, you still inflict a lot of damage. And on top of that, the moment you finish Cyrilda and Black Cleaver, you'll even provide a lot of additional utility for the team. And last but not least, we come to another assassin. I know, it's a lot of assassins this time, but for this we have a specific reason. Katarina has completely been forgotten. I haven't seen her a lot, and for whatever reason, I don't know why, she is still unbelievably obnoxious, thanks to the solo queue environment. So whenever you see a lower CC combination on the enemy team, you can just feel free to pick her. Cause in reality, the only thing you need is one kill to start the snowball. Then you'll guarantee that you kill the enemy mid laner on level 5 instantly. I know it really feels annoying to deal with, but it is what it is. And this is how you start the snowball. In lane, you want to punish the enemy with quick trades after hitting level 2 or at the latest on level 3. Using your first ability and second and third in combination grants you any chance you need for that. And on top of that, you'll even be safe because of the cooldown reduction or the cooldown refund, however you want to put it, and you can just jump back to your minion wave. And there's also ways to cheese with the champion. So usually with Katarina, you'll start amplifying Tomb and the default bonus adaptive stats are AP. However, if you take a longsword, the adaptive bonus from your Conqueror turns into AD. And since you're a melee and have a lot of spells, you proc it super fast, which means more AD and more damage. And since most of the players you play against won't expect this, you'll be granted an easy kill. So don't shy away from an extended trade if you're running a longsword. Thanks to the bonus AD, you will win in those scenarios, since most of the mages lack in that department. And even Galio can be a champion you can easily deal with that idea. But as I've mentioned Galio, there's one thing you never have to disregard. In fights you have to be very patient, similar to Zed and similar to most assassins anyway. But for Katarina you have to specifically wait for the enemy CC to be used and then jump in afterwards. With that, you will be able to clean up easily, and then you're going to make sure that the next fight is going to end instantly. So make sure to take Conqueror, Flash and Ignite, and sometimes even Barrier. And if there was a last piece of advice I'd have to give you, it would be around how to play her on the map. Be very proactive and spot the inters. You'll find plenty of them in any type of solo queue game, be it in Challenger, be it in Gold, or be it on any level of the game. And that's it for today. Thank you for watching and make sure to hit the sub button for another video tomorrow. See you then.